Man, I've got some big plans today for the Just Create SMP. As last episode, I built an amethyst farm, and it may not be the fastest amethyst farm in the world, but it definitely works. And the proof that it works, well, after an entire night of running, I now have 370 amethyst shards, which doesn't seem like a lot. And I also have 92 blocks of amethyst, which also doesn't seem like a lot, but I didn't have to manually farm them, and that's the big thing. It may be the slowest farm on the server, but it works. And if I do say so myself, also doesn't look too bad. And it also solved the qualm that a lot of you guys had about me playing this season. And that is, I'm not using enough belts. Well, I did use belts. One awesome part about this amethyst farm is it actually is going to serve a purpose today, because I needed it. What do I need it for? Mushrooms. Okay, but before we start working on a mushroom farm and all of the mushroom shenanigans that are going to take place over here, because I do plan on making some really cool farms and also getting it all set up today, I do want to do something else, and this is going to involve the actual mall shop. So as we take a ride all the way up to the mall shop, there is one problem that I actually have with what I had set up here. And that is the way that I'm displaying how many purchases have been made. With this setup, it's really not true. It would be true if we never touched the diamonds. But if I plan on actually using the diamonds and recirculating them, I'm going to have a way to pull them out. But if I pull them out, it's no longer going to be displaying how many purchases have happened. So this is a bit of a problem because I do want it to display how many purchases have happened over time. I think this is going to be a really cool thing to display as the series goes on, so we can actually see how many purchases even after we've reached the threshold that is the capacity of this stock ticker. And so I was trying to come up with a solution for how I could display this. And we do have a mod in here that actually makes this process really easy. Now, one thing I'm going to need to do is actually get rid of this guy down here. Like, I need this guy gone, because we are going to need to pull our items out and send them down into some sort of storage. And it just so happens that I have a storage connected right down here. So here's the plan. I'm going to have a chute, and then I'm going to have a funnel that is directly on top of the chute. Then I need to basically only pull one item at a time, and so I can actually use another funnel to be able to drop the items out. But I don't want to do that just yet. I want to save that for the next part, because we're going to use a smart observer to basically send a redstone pulse every time a single item passes through this, which should happen because we're going to limit how many is output to 1 by using an insight funnel. Then what I need to do is take a redstone link that is going to receive that redstone signal from here, and I'm just going to set it to a shovel and a diamond for right now. I think that is going to be reasonable. Then what I think would be kind of fun is over here, we can also place this redstone link, and we'll also do the same thing, a shovel and a diamond. And then we need to set this to receive mode. And this is where the powerful part comes into play, because we're going to be using what's called a counter gauge from Create Extra Gauges. And so what this is going to do is it is going to count redstone pulses from a redstone link that it is connected to. And so in this case, it is connected to this. As of right now, it's set to 0. And so now what I can do is I can go ahead and head over here. I'm going to remove this setup because we no longer need it. It's a relic of the past. And I then want to update our Nixie tubes, and I want to relink the Nixie tubes to this new display link. So I'll make sure to click the display link over here, and then we can have a display link like that's right here or up here. I really don't know where to put it just yet, but it does need to be connected to this wall. And I do like the idea of like having a display link like over here, and then having this like have redstone being linked through it. So now I can link that up, and you can see that this has led up into this and is now connected to the display link. And now this display link is going to send that particular information, that count number, to it. And so we're going to set this to full number. As of right now, it is set to 0. We could shorten it up. I think right now 0 is going to be fine, but it is going to start to count as soon as we actually set this up and this starts receiving redstone pulses. Oh, and by the way, that's exactly what that gauge does. Every time it receives a pulse, this number is going to go up. So let's go ahead and underneath here, place in a funnel real quick. And then as soon as I flip this, it should start sending diamonds out. And notice this is pulsing And this right here is starting to actually count. Oh, and it's counting the numbers up. And we're going to start to notice this displaying also. Oh, that is very cool. And I wonder if I change this mode to shortened, what does shortened look like? You know what? That's not bad. And I'm assuming that it only shortens maybe when it gets into the thousands potentially, or doesn't have enough space. But that's perfect right there. And so this is going to now actually count every single diamond that we get, and we can actually use diamonds. So now this is counting our orders. This is perfect. Now there's also some other cool things that you can do with this. Like for example, it can have thresholds. So you can have it go up to a certain number, and then after it receives a redstone pulse, after that, it resets back to 0, which is kind of a cool thing that you can do, because you can also include this into other gauges from this mod that can do some really complex logistical tasks. Now, as if that wasn't enough, in the back, I also added this, which has got some emerald blocks with some note blocks, and I have it set to B and E, which is the same as the Mario corn sound. And I have this just delayed 1 tick. So whenever we do order something and it goes through here, this will send the pulse, which will carry that redstone from this block, and then that will pass in playing that sound. And this is set, by the way, to the square wave because of that emerald block. So it's going to sound very much like a cash register sound, or like the Mario sound. It's going to be very nice. So if I, for example, want to grab some shafts and I have my diamond and I order it and it drops down, right? It should have played a sound. It counted the order, but did not play the sound. I think it's because the redstone here is actually not getting the redstone signal. But you know what? That being dropped down 1 should definitely fix that. So let's grab 1 more diamond. This is all about testing, right? Got to make sure this works. Let's grab, let's see, something that I always need more of, vaults. Perfect. 1 diamond. And there it goes. It played the sound immediately. That's so much more immersive. I love that. Now with this setup, the only thing I am super worried about is if this can count higher than 1024, because this is its threshold limit, but I have no idea if it can technically go higher than that. And if it doesn't go higher than that, well, that completely fools this entire setup. But if anything, at least I am now able to use the diamonds. Right, so with all of the mall work done, it's now time to get back into this fungi business. And I've got some plans for this. And like I said, it is going to use our amethyst because mushrooms require sort of darkness in order for it to grow successfully. But I don't want to go about this the old-fashioned way, where you end up planting mushrooms in a dark hall and then we let them grow and then we wait and then we go and harvest them manually. Instead, we have another mod in here that makes mushroom farming really simple. And that mod is also the same mod that adds all of the food that we decided to add this season, Farmer's Delight, which outside of the box has a lot of functional tools available to it. So outside of all of the food and of course all of those things, and also the cool functionality of the knife by giving you extra yield whenever you end up killing a mob with these things, there are some other things that we do get. For example, a safety net, which is sort of like a trampoline. We also get a basket, which works just like a hopper, but can collect items from any side. And then let's definitely not forget the cutting board, which is absolutely fantastic for salvaging certain things. But there's also another hidden gem, and that is the ability to grow mushrooms. And also speed up crop growth in general, which is another thing that this mod is really good at. For example, by utilizing rich soil and rich farmland, we can actually grow some special crops and speed up our existing crops. But getting our hands on this rich soil is not a super easy task. And that's because of organic compounds wait time. And we also have some special modifiers that need to go around it, including water, to be able to speed this process up. Now, thankfully, we have a couple of different recipes that we can use, including dirt, and we also have bone meal to be able to make this organic compost. So we are going to need some straw, which I do now have, and we also need some tree bark. Otherwise, we're going to need rotten flesh. I think tree bark is going to be an easier option for me. As far as bone meal goes, well, I can get that from here, as I do have bone meal that is now building up. And when it comes to farming tree bark, there's actually some interesting methods for which we can do this. By default, we can get it from a cutting board from this mod. And something to note about the cutting board, opposite of the handle is where items will always be ejected from. So if we place down a log and we click, notice it automatically sent it in that direction, which is very useful because we do need methods for collecting these resources. And with just about anything from the Farmer's Delight mod, when you place it down, it typically by default will eject to the right side. And this is really useful for automation because, like I said, if we have something that can collect like a hopper and we wanted to automate this operation, well, we can place a hopper directly on top that automatically feeds the logs, right? And then we could just right click, or we could actually use a dispenser, and a dispenser can actually use items. So I have my logs in here. I have my dispenser that is using an axe, by the way, because we need to use an axe for this operation. And then we just put a timer on here and notice it does the operation, throws the items in, and this is a way to automate from just Farmer's Delight in vanilla. And yes, this can go really fast, by the way. But we actually have a mod in here that, well, can also do this. So if we have a depot, we actually have something that can do all of the things that the cutting board can do, but we can do that from this slicer. And this is from the Create Slice and Dice mod, which is really nice. So all we have to do is bring this up and then throw a regular cog on here, and it's gonna work just like a mixer, but we can right click our item on here, and now we have a saw. And so yes, I can throw this on here, and it's supposed to be able to harvest our logs. Maybe one at a time because it's gonna produce byproducts. Maybe it needs to be on a belt, or maybe it's spinning in the wrong direction, which is kind of funny. So this does have a very specific orientation that has to be maintained. So to be able to change the orientation, well, we just use a vertical gearbox, and I'll pop this down here, and now it is spinning in the right direction. So I can throw all the logs on here, and that's doing that cutting board operation. What's funny about this is I think the vanilla method is actually faster, but this one should be fairly easy to automate. And look at that, we're getting so much tree bark. By the way, is it dealing durability to our tool? That is something that I do want to check out. So if you do F3 and H, we can actually see tool durability, and it's at 34. And so if I give it to it, give it a couple of hits. I mean, I know it does have unbreaking on it, but we're at 34. It definitely does use durability, so that's something you have to keep in mind. So a quick and dirty automation for this would look something like this, where we just do a denial list for spruce logs, place this inside here, and then we have a hopper feeding into the depot, which is going to be very, very easy and very, very nice. And then all we have to do is give it the axe like this, and then we can just drop our logs in. So that's going to place it in, and then our collected resources go inside here. After all of that farming, it is now time to make organic compost by utilizing this tree bark. So I do want to make as much of it as I possibly can. So it looks like possibly 2 stacks, give or take. I think 2 stacks is going to be enough for now. Then once we have this compost, there's a couple of ways we can speed up the process at which it does convert into rich soil. It is going to take anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes with an actual activator block next to it. So yeah, I think the best method is to just sort of place it like along the edges, and then we can place mushroom blocks actually directly on here, which is not something you can typically do. You have to have mycelium normally to be able to place down mushrooms. But thankfully, we can actually place it directly on the compost. Now, surprisingly, this entire pond ended up supporting exactly 64 of the compost, which is oddly satisfying that it filled this in perfectly. Something that's kind of funny to me, I've never actually used these or had a reason to use them, so using them for mushrooms is going to be kind of cool, and might be something that I do in the future if I ever need mushroom blocks. Now, while these are farming up, yeah, let's talk about mushrooms. And why exactly am I even farming mushrooms in the first place? Well, it's because it is a pretty popular building material. Mushroom stems specifically are really, really nice as a building material, and mushroom blocks in both the brown and the red form. I think this will potentially generate some cells, but for me, I really want the brown variant because I think it would go good with all of our sort of rust looking blocks. But also outside of that, any excess that we end up farming, for example, if I set up a farm for these mushrooms and we fill up our containers of blocks, well, at that point, I can just turn it into bone meal, and bone meal is very powerful. All in all, at the end of the day, I should be routing all of of my excess materials. Instead of voiding them, we should be turning it into bone meal. But you know, that's another project for another day. Still, it is pretty cool. There is a transition block. So yeah, it does, you kind of can see that it is changing form, getting closer to that rich soil version. By the way, if I had more of the mushrooms, I would definitely be using them in this process, but I'm kind of low on mushrooms. Now, you know what? Speaking of mushrooms, we should definitely get our hands on some other mushrooms, because all I have right now is brown mushrooms, and we definitely need the red ones. So don't mind me just going to farm some red mushrooms here. But notice, by the way, this is how you would have to farm them normally. So yeah, it does generate quite a bit of mushrooms when doing it this way, but this farm right here is quite complicated to set up with the create mod. And another bad side effect of this is, well, we would have to use fortune tools, which could potentially break if we wanted to farm. And out of all of those trees right here, look how much we got. We got 28 red mushrooms, like out of 2 mushrooms that we would have had to grow with bone meal. So I have a much, much better solution. Now, overall, this took about an hour for all of this to convert, an actual hour. And it really benefited from placing mushrooms on top, because once the mushrooms are on top of the rich soil, they have a chance of turning into a colony, which they most definitely will. And this colony is incredibly powerful and is kind of the mushroom mechanic that we're going to exploit. And that's because you can actually shear these, but not only can you shear them, you can actually harvest them with the Create Harvester. But as you can see, I was able to plant these, or I guess plant the regular mushrooms, and then once one cluster grew, it made it a whole lot easier for me to get even more mushrooms to plant, and even more. And so now I have, yes, 128 rich soil. The good bonus is we actually don't need it to be rich soil. We just need a little bit of it to kind of get started. Now, while I would love to sit here and shear these all day long and just watch this grow and do this process over and over again, well, I definitely want to automate this. I just don't have all of that time to sit around and manually farm things. So what I need to do for right now is all of my fully matured clusters, I want to pick them all up. And yes, you can take them. Not only are they good for decoration, like this is a really nice looking decoration, it's going to help us kind of get started with our next task. After getting all that cleared up, it's time to also collect all of this rich soil. With all that collected, it's now time for us to actually build the farm that is going to be producing all of the mushrooms that we're going to use. And this is where things get really simple. All I need to do is essentially replicate my spinny farms over here. But yes, it's going to be more like our wheat farm. However, there is one difference. This one, well, it likes to be dark. So you know what? Let's get to building. After getting all of this lined out and placed in for our first mushroom farm, you may notice I placed in more organic compost, and you might notice now that it's actually converting. And that's because, well, it really only needs, I believe, the sunlight and or water and our mushrooms on it to make the process happen faster, because it will just happen over time. So once I get my first farm built in here, the next farm, well, we can just build the entire farm just out of organic compost and just let the farm slowly change. And all the mushrooms that will get planted on top of that farm, well, they'll just eventually turn into clusters anyways. But let's go ahead and get this farm started. So just like all of our other farms, a water wheel is how we are going to do this. So we need to have a water wheel here that leads into a shaft, and then the shaft leads all the way up until a certain point. I think I want to go right about here. This gives us a little bit of space so that way we have room for what we're going to build this farm out of. And chutes. I really like the way the chutes look. And if we take a look at all of our other farms, I want to keep this similar design because I really love this. So if you remember from the last time I built a farm, we'll expand it out like so. So we have a platform for all of our mechanical harvesters to go on. Get those bad boys placed in. Then I'm going to want a center supporting block just like this. And then I'm just going to place down some regular chutes and then make sure those are raised up like this. Vault in the center, then some shafts on top with some supporting brackets holding it down. Then some fun can start to happen because over here, we're going to take a storage interface to allow us to connect up to a silo. And then with all of this said and done, it's now time for us to glue the entire contraption together. Now, remember how earlier I said that it does kind of benefit from being dark? Well, this is where that amethyst farm is now going to show itself. And I'm going to need as much amethyst as I can get my hands on simply because I need to make a bunch of dark glass. Now, thankfully, we do get 2 glass out of this whenever we do this operation, but man, this is very expensive considering how slow our farm is. I'm gonna have to get pretty creative with the way I'm going to utilize this glass because I want to be able to see into it, but I also want to make this like look good. And I wanted it to be dome shaped. So I did raise this up, giving myself a block space. So at least I can place this in here and this will take on the entire outline. But now as far as the upper chamber is concerned, this is where things are going to get a little bit difficult. And I think the best course of action here is to lay out all of the glass like so. Also make sure to set my mode into octagonal because it's going to make this a whole lot easier. Then what I'm thinking is some industrial iron that can outline this area. And then fingers crossed, do I have enough to fill in the rest of this with the glass? I don't know if I'm going to have enough. It's going to be barely. I have 2. I definitely don't have enough, but I can fill this in with the iron. Oh, and that makes it completely dark. Now, some things that really need to be done to this to make it less likely to spawn hostile mobs, which is something that I didn't want it to technically do, is probably placing in some redstone torches, which I think would be a good idea. Making sure they're placed in here somewhere. So something like this would probably be good. And or here, just to light it up just a little bit. And I think the redstone torches emit just enough light for mushrooms to still be able to grow correctly. Now with the entire fungi farm basically ready to go, what I want to do is kind of schematic this entire thing. So this is going to be really nice because I do want to build 2 of these, one for brown and one for red mushrooms. And so being able to take something that pre-exists, that already works and is already glued together, well, it only makes sense to be able to replicate it, much like you can do in many other games like Satisfactory. And this is where the schematic is what it was really designed for, was so that way you can take a contraption setup and make more of them. So there we go, the entire fungi farm ready to be duplicated. So now before I turn all of this on and actually get it set up, let's go ahead and get the other one placed in. And I want this one to be over here. Cool thing is, now that I have it and I can go ahead and use the schematic table to place it in, I can actually visualize how big this is going to take up and how much space it's going to take up in this area, how big this farm actually is. Oh, this is good. And I can line it up exactly the way I want it and even rotate it. And so I'm thinking somewhere about here should be able to get the job done. Yes, this looks like it fits perfectly. So next on the to-do list is a schematic cannon. Now with the schematic cannon, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to place our schematic inside of here after defining its location. And then we need to place an inventory next to it. For example, I have this backpack here, which has some of my items from this farm in it. And then what we need to do is put a clipboard in here to get a checklist, a material checklist, and then I'm going to pick my backpack up. So inside of here is all of the materials that is going to be needed and all the materials that we already have. This is all of the things that are going to be required for our craft. Now, something really cool that we can do with this is with our storage that I set up, we have a loader frog. And so I can take this name and copy the loader ID. And then inside of here, instead of storage main, I'm going to say loader. And then we will go ahead and save that. Then all I have to do is click with my material checklist. And these are some of the items that we are going to need in order to craft this. Now, I don't want some of these things, but I can actually go ahead and click send. And anything that I did have for this recipe is going to get sent to the loader frog, which I think is rather cool. Now, all the way down to the mall hub, if I have any other ingredients that are inside of the mall for this, I can also do the exact same thing. I can say loader, and then anything that is in this that this has, for example, glue and torches, well, that's also going to get automatically sent into this barrel, not into loader. But if this did use a chain, I could request it. But it is really cool that you can request schematic materials from the checklist from the blaze burner. Now that we have all of our materials, we're just about ready. Just put some gunpowder in here, and then in the printer settings, it's by default set to replace solid with any. But what I want is to have it set to replace solid with empty, and then make sure to skip any missing blocks so it doesn't fill those locations in. And then we should be ready to hit the play button and sit back and watch it build this thing. Now, something funny about the schematic cannon is when it placed in the organic compost, it seems like it kept the state that it was actively in mid-transition, which did allow it to forcibly change faster, which I think is kind of funny. Now, something that you might have missed from the schematic cannon actually working is when it applied glue. This is like one of the really powerful parts about doing contraptions is the schematic cannon can apply glue to your contraption. Very, very powerful. And just to sort of show this off, let's go ahead and get this rotating. I didn't have to apply any glue. It just automatically functions. With both farms in, let's start focusing on the actual farm part. So the way we're going to farm mushrooms is by utilizing this rotating machine. We got to get the mushrooms in, but before we do all of that, we do need to make sure we have a way of funneling the items out. And so I do want to use my drain system for this. And so this is going to be pretty easy. We'll just brass funnel the items directly out of the contraption and then send that along a line, which is going to end up going into a silo. Yes, another one of our vertical silos. So I'm going to make this as tall as we can make a vertical silo, which I don't remember. I think it's like 6 blocks or something like that. Perfect. That's the height. And then we now have like a way of collecting the resources and then sending them through frogs and stuff like that. Now, I know this is going to let a little bit of light in, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to completely degrade the entire farm, but we'll have to see. We may have to figure out a solution for covering this up. But now that that is done, it is the moment of truth. I get to start placing in the mushroom colonies and just letting this thing farm them. And by the way, it leaves them. So it harvests them at the lowest point and then does all of the harvesting. Each time there's a growth stage, it is going to just continuously harvest those mushrooms. There is one issue that you're going to notice. It can harvest regular mushrooms before they turn into the colonies. So I do have to have my contraption actually shut off in order for all of our colonies to get fully grown. Now, a nice little solution to being able to place those colonies in is by making sure this is only place the anchor when it is destroyed. And then you can use a clutch to stop it in place. So this can be activated and running, and then we can activate the redstone, and then this just leaves it in place and makes this a whole lot easier for me to get all of these colonies in. Now, I'm basically doing the exact same thing over here, and I'm actually going to leave this one uncovered for now, but once I get the amethyst built up, I should be able to place the glass in for this one. But it will be kind of interesting to see the different yield rates, because I think this one's only going to grow really fast at night, but it being on top of the rich soil will also get like randomly bone mealed because the rich soil does have that bonus growth effect. So I have no idea. I think it will work both ways though. But yes, we have to get all of this converted, which this one's going to take a little bit of time. I'm pretty excited about this. It's all ready to go. All of the mushrooms for the brown mushrooms are ready to be farmed. Oh man. So that has now farmed all of the mushrooms, and this vault was empty, by the way. And so that one cycle has produced over 500 mushrooms in one run. And by the way, this does grow, like I said, really fast. You can see almost every time it spins around, it is depositing some sort of mushroom. I think that is pretty powerful. And this is just going to continuously run, especially while we're on, just constantly running and doing this circle over and over again, farming mushrooms. But this is just the farming mushroom part, because we have a lot of mushroom processing that's going to have to take place in order for us to automate the production of blocks. And not just regular mushroom blocks and also red mushroom blocks, but the mushroom stems, which we're going to have to come up with some sort of solution to producing stems out of these red mushroom blocks, while also taking excess after these build up and producing bone meal with them. So there may not have been a lot of logistics in today's episode, but definitely is going to be a lot going on in the next few episodes, because this is only the start of our mushroom empire. There's a lot of decorating that's going to have to take place, but man, as we develop this area, you can already start to see my idea coming to life. And I think this area right here is going to be perfect for a mushroom factory, and also the platform for potential other factories as we carry on and we build some other things that are going to go here. As you know what they always say, trust the process. But if the process is something that you can put your faith into, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up so you don't miss a future episode like the ones where we're going to be processing all of these mushrooms. And now, without further ado, it's time for me to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Yummier. Thank you so much for your amazing support in choosing to support me over on the Discord, becoming a Discord premium member, and supporting my content in one of the best ways possible. Thank you so very much. And guys, I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.